dialogues, there's a layer of youth that we forget, and that's the layer that don't have access to information, don't have access to justice, don't have access to democracy, don't have access in the state, in these topics that we're talking about. And in our stats, when we say 74% of this, 90% of this, we actually don't consider them. I'm from the Eastern Cape, township called Mdantsane, and I know for a fact that if I would go into my township today, most people would not even know what I'm talking about. And I think in our democracy, for every democracy to work, the perfect democracy to work, we need access. We need access to information. And right now in South Africa, we're not having that. So I think we need to, as people in civil society, in government, policymakers, we need to invest in access to information.
I know the provincial government of Gauteng already has a big budget in terms of mobilizing young people to vote. So therefore, there's also a sense of responsibility that we should also take as local government. But then, sitting here, I think one thing that makes it a bit difficult for the local government to take the authority is that the issue of voting is left to parties. It becomes an issue of a political party as opposed to being of a local government, which is reliably a sphere of government, and we should be taking up those sort of issues. So therefore, the ignorance on our part as the local government says a lot in terms of the youth that are coming out to vote.
The question that I'd like to ask the panel is, do you not think that the alienation the youth are experiencing is actually being experienced throughout the voting population? And that the fundamental problem we're dealing with is that Parliament and accountability is the fundamental problem, and that, you know, we all are very distant from authority. You know, Western representative parliamentary democracy, where we cast this vote once every 5 years and that's it. And somehow the alternative of a more participatory type of democracy, where we meet as streets or as suburbs and we meet our councillors, and that they're not full-time councillors, but they actually are recalled maybe they're ordinary people who are released, like for judiciary duty. Now maybe we should have that sort of system where our representatives are released. We're ordinary people and are released, and before you can be corrupted and drawn into all those things, you call back after a year and the next one takes their turn. So there are alternatives out there that could make power and, well, authority a lot more accessible, and I'd just like your views on that.
Everyone is alienated by the system. That is true. But then the question is, who bears the biggest grunt? Is it the older generation or the young people? Who makes up majority of the population? If South Africa, the average age in South Africa is 24, and you're going to tell me about 60-year-olds who are also alienated, but there's only about 10% of them. The discussion is not becoming fruitful. It's not really that fruitful, because in about 20 years' time, those young people will still be alive, and those 60-year-olds, chances are they'll be old and won't be alive. We need to be talking to people, you know, who will be living throughout these systems. The life expectancy in South Africa is sitting around 59, 60. And if we're going to address issues affecting 80-year-olds and taking them, you know, looking them over the issues facing 24-year-olds and 19-year-olds, we're not going to progress as a country. We're not going to go where we want to go as a country. I hear what you say. It's just that I believe we need to prioritize which issues or which, you know, which battles we want to engage in as a society at large.
I love the question that one of the speakers posed, that does the youth have what it takes to change the system? Because one of the challenges I've faced is that the oppression mostly comes from the youth most of the times. It's very hard to convince a young person to believe in you while you are young. The first question they will ask is that, how can you be led by such a young person? So one, the young people don't believe in their capabilities and what they can do. Do you understand? I think one of the things that are affecting South Africa is that we have autocratic leadership leading democracy. We've got autocratic leadership leading democracy. I've got nothing against the ruling party, but if you watch, I follow Parliament a lot. If you watch Parliament, all the debates are becoming useless. I was even asking one of my friends that what's the use of Parliament, because no matter how much they debate on issues, what the ruling party will do will say, okay, let's go and vote automatically they know they will win. So that's autocratic. It's either our way or one way. So the debating process, it becomes just a process so that you can say, we have done it. You understand? So be it the other opposition, they are not giving, oppositions are not given a chance to say, no, this is wrong. Can't you do it this way? They come and say, this is right. And all the people from the ruling party will come and say, yes, it's right, yes, it's right. And then once they see that it's becoming hot, they'll say, let us vote for it. And then they win because of majority.
My name is Godfrey. I'm an activist and a member of the Right to Know campaign. Actually, I would like just to raise an issue. What are we really talking about when we say the youth is not really active in terms of participating in the elections? Because I think, or I believe that the election should have a strong reflection of the will of the people. So if there is none, then the interest also is not there. So we should actually be looking at changing the whole electoral system so that it attracts these young people because they are the future leaders.
Maybe we should start framing politics outside of the party political arena, because there's a lot more to politics than just party political, because sometimes people might feel they don't want to be tainted by a certain, and if you've been to a branch meeting, you know the quality of a cadre, and that's across the board. It's politics of the stomach, it's my turn now, it's we must eat the national cake, all of that kind of stuff. So those are the three things. It's hard to answer that question, I know, on a panel, but if you could just give me an imagining of what that kind of politics is like, because everyone has touched on it's outmoded what we currently have.
Something we need to explore and explore it with the relevant stakeholders. The problem is that the stakeholders that we're not speaking to stakeholders. We're just assuming that because you have a diploma, you have a degree, you've been put on a certain pedestal, you can speak for people. And we're not allowing people to speak for themselves. And that's what government is assuming, is that because they have fought the struggle, because they are liberators, they have the experience to bring, people together, and they can do as they please. And there comes a disconnection. For me, that's what I feel. And if people are saying that there's, fees must fall, political awakenings of the youth, and youth are now all of a sudden not becoming apathetic, that is not true. Youth have been fighting issues of fees for a long time. TUT is a perfect demonstration. They've been doing it for more than 10 years. They have not been acknowledged because they are a black school, that's so to say, and VET has got proximity to whiteness, and we need to speak to that and say, they got attention because of who they are as an institution. TUT have been doing this for years, and what they've been painted as is, ungrateful little brats. And it's the language we use when speaking to such things, and holding each other accountable as, human beings on a personal basis as friends. If we look at the issue of, let's say, xenophobia, if we stop condoning jokes like makwerekwer, it goes a long way into, making sure that xenophobia can be beaten, tribalism, calling people derogatory terms because of their cultures or preferences. Such little things, holding each other accountable. If we can't hold our friends accountable, how do we expect to hold someone at power accountable? If your mother or father is saying, you should do this and that's because you belong to a certain tribe, and you disagree with that, and you're not standing up against that, why do you want to stand up against the president of the country if you can't stand up to something so small at home? So we need to be careful as how we approach certain things in society.
I am a human rights lawyer. I also happen to be young. I'm 23, so I think I fall within either debate. I think we would do ourselves a disservice if we were to walk away from here with this narrative that we should speak to young people in this condescending and patronizing way. Young people don't understand. Young people can't relate. Young people aren't interested in politics and policy. I can name a number of people that I'm surrounded by, that I speak to on a daily basis, who are in my age group, who are interested in those issues. And I think what we saw with Fees Must Fall is not new. Pearl knows. The fees protests at WITS were not new. From the time I walked in at WITS, issues about outsourcing, about transforming the university, about fees, were protested every single semester. And I think what made Fees Must Fall different is that it literally brought the entire nation's attention towards it. But there's a lot that happens before it gets there.
I agree with you in the sense that we are in a situation where a lot of young people are being spoken to and are being given the platform to share their ideas. It's like what I said earlier on, is that there is that assumption that people we're serving have no clue of what's going on around them. And that's the assumption that's bringing us back as a society. We're assuming that the people we're serving are helpless people. And if we start addressing that and thinking of that as servant leaders, is that, you know what, let's take this platform to the people. Let them speak. Let them say to us, why aren't we registering to vote? And why aren't we participating in this and that, and hold the powers that be, government, to account and saying, you know what, we're not interested in voting because, one, you don't speak to us. You don't speak to the ideas that we have. We do not understand what you're saying. You do not represent us. I feel a huge disconnect between you and I because you're old, I'm young. There's a lot of barriers that are between us.
I feel like everybody here, including me myself, is a testament of how we are not actually tackling the problem. We're all educated. We can all make informed decisions. This shouldn't have been had here. This setting should have been in a place where it actually makes sense. A place where it actually reaches people, that information that the people seek. We should be taking this information to them, that they should be part of this discussion, and none of them are here. I'm thinking of bread. You're telling me about voting for Jay-Z, who just built a house in Nkandla and whatever. You're not relating to me. I want to see food. You're telling me about paper and votes. Those same papers that actually cost money that could have changed my life. So there is no relation when you're talking to, the youth about, making change and whatever. I just feel like, if government really wants to make a change, it's like in a house. You get there's a father. There is no ways that a child is going to take up the podium and address the family and whatever. It's the father that's going to do so. The youth is not ready. No matter how much you try and fight it, there is no youth that is ready to lead a country. It's a process. You have to mature into it.
Firstly, it's unfair to assume that everyone here is educated. I have 6 years of a wits education and I don't feel educated because my degrees can't take me into a township and make me relevant to people in that community. I don't even feel relevant in my own community sometimes, and no amount of a wits education is going to change that. But I also think it's unfair to say, what are we doing here? Why are we having these conversations? And then say that youth aren't ready to lead. Because then why are we here veiling? There are many people in this room that can lead this country, and my age, or our age, is irrelevant completely to that.
Everything that everybody has said here is very important, and I honestly have nothing to add to everything that everyone has said.
The people running the country have people running them. And if you know House of Cards, Frank Underwood is that guy. Listen. And here's the thing about legitimacy, right? Is when we understand that Jacob Zuma might not be the entirety of the problem, that capital is a huge part of this problem, right? When you think about things like Fees Must Fall, which has its own issues, by the way, that Fees Must Fall also, in very many ways, were co-opted because of what's called politics of the stomach, right? You start realizing where your enemy is and where the challenge must be. So you can't sit and say we want to topple this system and Zuma must fall when we're not going to challenge capitalism as a system, when we're not going to change the fact that majority of this land is not owned by majority of the people that live here. And changing Jacob Zuma won't change that. There are people that run the people that run us. And those are the ones that decide on legitimacy. And if we're going to take anarchy, and if we're going to rise up and heed to this call that we must now emulate 76, then it's those people that we need to go to. We need to find the Frank Underwoods of South Africa, right? And that's where you take your legitimacy. And that's the thing, right? Is political reform, I agree with you, Comrade Godfrey, is that this current system does not work. And so if we talk about this great supposed democracy, I'd argue that we're actually not a democracy because opposition parties don't have the capacity to actually change the status quo. So if we can interrogate those things and we think about reform and we think about who we're putting there and who we're deciding as legitimate, and we find our Frank Underwood. But if we can find those pockets of power and change it, then I think we're on a decent track, at least.
let me start by paraphrasing something Jay Naidu said during an interview when he was asked, what did the ANC do wrong after 1994? And he said, we turned our people into clients and disempowered them. We did not make them a part of their own development, but we told them we'd do everything for them. That was his concession. Now, I think one of the most important things that have come out of this conversation is that people need to feel empowered. We need a system that makes people feel empowered to change their own lives, to actually have a voice and a say in their own development. There was the talk about electoral reform. Those are systemic issues that we really need to start looking at in our political system, is how our political system is arranged. Does that actually work for us as a society? Then we also need to separate parties and party politics from processes. Youth are not homogeneous. The struggles of rural youth are not the same as the struggles of urban youth. The struggles of young women are not the same as the struggles of young men. And we need to be more nuanced when we talk about these issues and the challenges that young people are facing. And then the other thing that I feel that we really need to delve into is this question of accountability that the panelists have raised and that the floor has raised very aptly. How do we make our leaders more accountable? How do we make society, how do we make ourselves more accountable as well, to one another? I love the point that you made, because it's easy to be hypocritical and point at people that are far away and not ask questions about our own conduct and behavior in our own communities, in our own circles. So I think these are issues that have been brought up from this conversation that we should explore. On our platforms, on Twitter, we should continue this conversation. And I want to thank Tammy and Pearl and Khaya. Thank you so much. You've made yourselves very vulnerable to us. We've put you on the spot. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts. And to the audience, thank you as well.
Go safe and keep on. I think, what we need in society is active citizenship. And we need people to take charge, take control of their own destiny and, not to defer so much to politicians and to the elected and to old people and to the patriarchy, but to take charge, of their own life also, but also take charge of their own politics also. Thank you for coming. We see you the next one. Yeah.